Hi, I'm Debbie Harbeck, and I'm a certified life coach working with women in midlife and through the menopause transition. So each week, I'll be sharing the latest information, inspiration, and generate some momentum so you can move forward and feel more in control of your changing midlife body and your life. Let's go. Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. I am very happy you're here today because I am answering some of your questions today. So just recently, I put out a request. If you have any questions related to midlife, menopause, whatever you might be going through, I would love to hear them and I would love to answer them. So today I'm answering 3 questions that I received, and I just want to thank you all for submitting them. I love that you took the time to send them in. And I know that these questions, your questions, are also the questions that so many of us have. And before I go into them, though, I just want to make a very important disclaimer here is that I am not a doctor. I am not a medical professional. So although these questions that I got are addressing certain health conditions, I'm not going to go into all the medical background and information of these conditions. What I find really interesting, though, is that you're curious about these things that might be related to menopause. So there's a lot of conditions, and I think there's maybe some fear, there's some worry that our changing hormones are going to lead to health conditions. So for sure, this is partly true. There are health concerns that happen with this hormone shift that we're experiencing, but there are also solutions, and that's really where I want to focus today, because we can get stuck in this worry loop. And I get stuck in it every so often. And we can go through this menopause transition worried about all these health issues that we're possibly susceptible to, right? But I think we all know women who have lived to a ripe old age and who have gotten there fairly healthy. So it's not something that's going to happen to everybody. It's not something that maybe we need to worry about on a big scale, but there are also things you can do for prevention. And these are the things that I want to talk about today. And I want to share what I know has been proven to help prevent or manage these conditions. I also want to emphasize that it helps to talk about this. Like, I'm glad that this podcast is here, that we can use it to bring to the surface the issues that are surrounding menopause, the things that we're actually worried about and curious about. We can talk about them here. So please share this podcast with your friends, your sisters, your colleagues, your mom, your daughters, whoever you think needs to listen to it, even your husbands, even the men in your life, if you want them to understand a little bit more about maybe what you're going through. And I also want to invite you to go beyond this podcast, to join me this fall. I am starting a coaching group this fall for women who want to learn, who want to share, who want to move forward on getting healthier, on getting stronger as they age. And I'll be starting it in September, where we can connect and we can encourage each other. And I hope you can join me for that. So stay tuned. In the upcoming weeks, I'll be sharing more about how you can join me for group coaching this fall. But let's get started on the questions that you sent me. So the first one is really good, and it's kind of an umbrella for the other ones. So this person writes, I've always prided myself on being someone who hardly ever gets sick. I almost never had to take a sick day off of work. But in the last several years, as I went through perimenopause and now menopause, that has definitely changed. I was wondering what has happened to my immune system. I was feeling pretty discouraged as I've been trying to do everything right, like eating healthy, getting enough sleep and exercise, etc. I did a little bit of research of the effects of declining estrogen on the immune system, and it seems like there's probably a link. I would like to know more about what I can do to stay healthy and avoid picking up all these bugs. Such an amazing question. And a big question, because there are a couple of things here. There's our immune system. Yes, our immune system is impacted by decreasing estrogen. And I know I've gone into the impacts of chronic stress here on the podcast, because stress is a huge issue when we get to this time of life. But it's really important when it comes to the immune system, because when estrogen and progesterone decrease in the menopause transition, we're more affected by the stress hormone cortisol. meaning we've likely got more cortisol in our bodies than we did before, even if we haven't changed anything in our lives. And this last piece that those few words that I just said are so important. Even if you haven't changed anything in your life, even if you're eating the same, exercising the same, have the same job, sleeping the same, have the same relationship circumstances, even if it's all the same, your cortisol will likely be higher than before. And when cortisol is elevated, the inflammation in your body goes up and your immune system becomes challenged. So the key here is that you need to change something to reduce the stress and inflammation. So first thing to look at is to see if you're getting enough quality sleep. So sleeping enough, meaning 7 to 9 hours in terms of time, and waking up less during the night can do wonders if it's not happening for you right now. Now, sleep may be affected by stress or vice versa, so you may have to work on both at the same time. Now, when I see clients who often get sick, I find that they're either doing too much, meaning they're constantly booked or busy, they're rushing around with very little buffer time, or they're doing too much of the things that don't really feel good to them, meaning they're not doing the things they really want to do or that would really nourish them. They're doing the things they feel they have to do more often than not. So figuring this out for yourself takes some awareness. Are you stressed out because you're not doing the things that would really fill you up? You've got to make an effort to intentionally notice what you're doing and if what you're doing makes you feel good or not. So one way I do this with my clients is I have them keep a time journal. So every 15 minutes for a day or two, you write down what you're doing and how you feel. And you set a timer to go off every 50 minutes and just write down the truth, whatever it is you're doing, even if you're scrolling in the moment, doesn't matter. And what people usually find surprising is that they're usually pretty busy, but not with the things that usually matter so much, like maybe they're scrolling or procrastinating on doing the things they want to do. And they usually also find that they feel pretty blah or even feel pretty negative or down. And this is what I see consistently. So if this is what you find, this is where you make a decision and you decide, I need to change something. You decide what that is. In coaching, when I coach clients, we work on making small changes towards feeling good, always one thing at a time, because big sweeping changes will probably be overwhelming and generally don't stick. So you don't want to go, I need to change my sleep. I need to change my eating habits. I need to change my exercise habits. I need to relax more. All these things, yes, they're important, but not all at once. So start with the easiest and simplest changes. Once you do that, start prioritizing the things that we know from studies work to lower stress. So go outside more and get some fresh air, take walks, build muscle strength, eat more energizing foods that contain antioxidants and are anti-inflammatory, like colorful fruits and veg, nuts and seeds, and of course, foods high in protein and healthy fats, as well as avoiding the sugar, the processed foods, the alcohol. Also, another good thing to check here is your vitamin D. Especially if you live here in Canada or a northern climate like we do, or maybe a southern climate if you're in the south of the world. The fact is that most of us are vitamin D deficient and we need to supplement. So if you're not already taking a vitamin D3 supplement, consider taking at least 1,000 IUs a day. Vitamin D, in addition to keeping your bones strong, because that's usually when we hear of it, we need to keep our bones strong, so we take vitamin D, but it also helps to regulate your immune system. Really important. So since we're talking immune system here, I just want to mention something else. Autoimmune conditions. Autoimmune conditions happen when the immune system attacks healthy cells. So conditions that we hear of like lupus, type 1 diabetes, Hashimoto's, which is a type of hypothyroidism, MS, rheumatoid arthritis, IBS, Crohn's disease. There are literally about 100 autoimmune conditions. And the reason we need to be aware of these things is that women are 3 times more likely than men to have an autoimmune condition. And usually they get diagnosed at either times of high stress or hormone change. which sounds familiar. When we're going through the menopause transition, it might be a time of high stress and hormone change. So many women in this transition discover they have an autoimmune condition. So just reiterating here that keeping inflammation down is key in this case as well, whether you've been diagnosed with a condition or not. So the same things I mentioned earlier, like stress reduction, better sleep, exercise, eating anti-inflammatory, which is mostly whole foods, adding some vitamin D, these things can all help. Also, hormone therapy has been shown to reduce joint inflammation, and so have certain probiotics and curcumin. So that's hopefully answered the question about the immune system as to why we might get sick more often in midlife and what you can do to help yourself and to help prevent it. So I'm going to move on to the second question, which was about fibromyalgia. So it was just very simply asking, is there a link between fibromyalgia and menopause? So if you don't know what fibromyalgia is, it's basically a chronic, widespread pain in various parts of your body. And it's also characterized by poor sleep, by fatigue, brain fog, and you might recognize all these symptoms as symptoms of menopause as well. So that's why it's challenging to diagnose, because most people affected by fibromyalgia are women, and the average age of diagnosis is 46, right in perimenopause, right? So if it happens to be diagnosed before perimenopause, what happens is that fibromyalgia tends to get worse when your hormones start to change. So it's thought that declining estrogen plays a role. And in fact, it's been researched and it is shown that this is the case. And there's recent research also that shows that HRT, hormone replacement therapy, can help improve the symptoms of fibromyalgia. Now, because what tends to trigger fibromyalgia is stress or trauma, talking to a mental health professional can also be part of the treatment for that. And of course, the lifestyle changes, which you can make to ease your symptoms, similar to the ones I mentioned before, especially related to reducing stress and getting better sleep. So talk to a menopause doctor or a professional who ideally understands both menopause and fibromyalgia, and ask them questions about how to best handle this situation. And share with them the things I've offered here, including HRT, to see if that might be helpful for you. That might be an option. So if we move on from fibromyalgia, I had this last question. I've been suffering from brain fog and forgetfulness, and I'm worried that this will lead me to being diagnosed with Alzheimer's down the road. Should I be concerned about that? This is such a great question. I think a lot of us get concerned in midlife because we're struggling to find our words or our keys, or we're having a harder time focusing as we go through this hormone transition. What's good to know is that while there may be this cognitive dip in this time of transition, it's been shown there is a dip, women still score better than men on cognitive tests before menopause, during this time of transition, and post-menopause. So despite the dip, we are still cognitively working. And this dip situation usually corrects itself within a few years after menopause. So just because you're forgetful now doesn't mean you're losing your mind. It doesn't mean you're headed for dementia. I just read actually in Lisa Mosconi's book, The Menopause Brain, a great book if you're interested more about this topic, that dementia isn't forgetting your keys. It's forgetting what your keys are for. So a little forgetfulness isn't usually a problem. That being said, we should still be concerned with preventing Alzheimer's because it does affect twice as many women as men. And there is a possible link to the decline in estrogen and possible benefit in using HRT. And there are concrete things we can do to help prevent the onset of dementia. And the first thing is exercise. Exercise has been proven as the most effective thing we can do in our lifestyle that can help prevent Alzheimer's because it helps control blood glucose and stress. And in particular, they look at endurance exercise, which is like longer bouts of moderate walking, let's say, running, swimming, cycling, pickleball, tennis, whatever you like, doing it for, a good length of time is very helpful, as well as strength training. Because we know that the stronger your grip strength, the less likely you are to be diagnosed with dementia. So that strength in your grip, which is indicative of the strength in your body, is actually important. So get strong. That's the first thing. And then diet. Of course, the same things as the anti-inflammatory foods mentioned earlier, because actually, what's interesting is that some researchers have indicated that Alzheimer's just might be an autoimmune condition, meaning it is inflammatory. And so anti-inflammatory foods are very helpful, and including a supplement of omega-3, in particular DHA, which is found in fish oil, and it's been shown to help maintain brain health. So I've been taking it for years, omega-3 supplement. I think we all should take it. It has a lot of brain benefit, heart benefit. So something to consider adding to your daily regimen. So I hope to those of you who have asked these great questions that these answers have been helpful. If you have any other questions or comments, please let me know. As I'm not a doctor and I don't diagnose or treat these conditions, it's important that you bring your concerns to your medical practitioner. Now, some medical practitioners, unfortunately, may offer some unhelpful advice like, oh, just eat better or exercise more or lose weight. But there's zero guidance there. And that's why I do what I do. Women come to me for this specific guidance. They get the specifics they need, and we work step by step to making those things happen. That's what I am 100% here for. We are all aware by now that making these changes sounds simple, but it's definitely not easy. That's why I partner with women to do this. It can be overwhelming because we don't clearly know what we have to do or how we can stick to it. So when you work with me, we break it down, we figure things out that offer the best bang for your buck, and we build success and get you moving forward. So recently I was working with a client who has an autoimmune condition that showed up in midlife for her, which was Hashimoto's, which is where the thyroid slows down and you can feel fatigued, you can feel anxious, you can gain weight. Now, of course, there are medications like Synthroid for this condition, and finding the right dose is tricky but important. But in addition to meds, making lifestyle changes that support your thyroid is critical. So I went to work with this lady on the things that weren't going well for her, the things where she was struggling. Sleep was a big one for her. So we got her actually off of melatonin and into a much better sleep routine. So she's sleeping so much better. We also worked on drinking more water and planning her food in a very simple way and walking each day. From there, just these simple changes built up over time. She started to feel so much better, more energized and more motivated, and she actually lost some weight and she just felt stronger overall. And that's her success story. It's not glamorous, but it works. This is how I work with my clients. So if you do have a medical condition, we can work in parallel with the medications that you might be taking, because medication does have its role, but there are so many other things you can do to help control or prevent these issues from happening. So I really want to emphasize that, because that is the positive takeaway from this podcast. Yes, you can go down that rabbit hole of worry where you're worried that everything is going to happen to you, but there are so many things you can do right now to make sure that you stay as healthy as possible and actually avoid a lot of these things. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast today. Please don't forget to like the podcast or even subscribe to it, even better, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And stay tuned to find out how to join my coaching group for women who are going through menopause. It starts this September. I really can't wait. And I'll see you next week for a fresh new episode. In the meantime, keep moving forward, and bye for now. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Midlife Momentum Podcast. If you want to learn more about working with me, come visit me at debbieharbeckcoaching.com. That's Debbie, I-E, Harbeck with a C, coaching.com. See you next week.